Ready, Maria? Okay. Good morning, everybody. I would like to call this meeting of the TRPA Operations and Governance Committee to order. Today is Wednesday, May 22nd, and it is 8:34 a.m. Maria, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Aguilar. Mr. Bass. Ms. Dis.
Here.
Ms. Gustafson.
Here.
Ms. Hill.
Here.
Ms. Lane.
I'm here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay, great. Let's go over the remote and in-person meeting rules for the day. For the members of the public who are joining remotely to observe the meeting, go to trpa.gov. Under the calendar header, click on Governing Board Hybrid Meeting for May 22nd, 2024. There you will find a link to the public webinar hosted on Zoom. To address committee members directly with your comments, raise your hand in Zoom by clicking the raise hand at the bottom of your screen and at the appropriate agenda item. With your hand raised, you will be unmuted by TRPA staff and have 3 minutes to address the committee. If you've used the dial-in numbers to join us by telephone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand and be unmuted. For items that are agendized as informational only, we will hear public comment during the general public comment period at the end of the meeting. Comments on items agendized for action or possible action, we will hear public comment before the committee takes any action. To our remote committee members, if you wish to speak, you can also raise your hand in Zoom. You'll find the raise hand icon on the bottom of your screen. Remote committee members may not use the chat box to make comments or to have any sidebar conversations. Please, everyone, remember to mute your mics unless you're speaking to cut down on the background noise. Finally, I would like to also ask that all remote members turn on their cameras if they are able. Members of the public who have joined us in person, please raise your hand at the appropriate time for public comment, and you will be called on first to speak in the front of the room. Committee members who are in person, please raise your hand if you wish to comment or just elbow me and speak clearly into the microphone in front of you. You will be viewing the webinar on a personal computer. Please ensure that your microphone and speakers are turned off to prevent audio feedback into the room. At this time, we will look at approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda, Mr. Cox? No changes? Okay. We'll go ahead and deem the agenda approved as posted for the record. I assume there's no, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, let's go to agenda item number 2, which is approval of the minutes. We have a draft set of minutes from April 24th on page 9 of your packets. Does any member of the committee wish to make changes or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
I was just going to abstain since I was not at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. I should have asked for abstentions.
That's okay.
I apologize. That brings us to item number 3, discussion and possible recommendation for approval of the April financials. This information can be found on page 67 of the packet, and Mr. Cox is going to present this item. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair. Chad Cox, TRPA CFO for the record. Today we're going to go through the April financials. Next slide, please. So just a quick update on the both states' budgets. California likely continue in a deficit for the coming years. I think we saw the May revise come out on the 14th. There is still a deficit in that May revise. If I look at the revenues estimated in, versus the expenditures planned at this moment, it's roughly a $9.4 billion deficit. So the state continues to run as a deficit, and the final budget is expected this summer. In Nevada, the release of the TRPA staff salary increase, that agenda item got pushed from May to June. And Julie and I and Devin will be in attendance to that meeting here on June 11th. So that's up and coming in Nevada. Next slide, please. So a couple of highlights through April in terms of revenue and expenses. We're 83% through the year. So 10 months out of 12, we got 2 months to go. So that's the benchmark. We typically look at things linearly. Revenues are shown at this point at 65% of budget. Planning fees continue to ramp up. Planning fees are at 75% of budget through April. Shoreline and AIS fees are at 67 and 68% respectively. Boating season's upon us, so as we see that seasonality work out, obviously we've got Memorial Day weekend coming up, so we expect those fees to continue to ramp, and I think we're on track for the year. Other income continues to be strong as well, and we'll get into that on the next page. Grants did ramp, right? From what I can tell, looking at history, grants tend to be a bit back end loaded as the way that we work through those. Grants ramped up from 25% of budget last time we chatted up to 34%. So we recognized roughly $1.2 million of grant revenue in a month. So that continues to ramp, which is what we need in order to get to the budget for the year. Expenses are running at 56% of budget. Comp is at 78%. Our contract expense ramped up as well to 41% of budget, which is what you'd expect. As the grant stuff goes up, we do a lot of the grant work with contracts. And then the final debt interest payment is due June 1st. So we actually just put through the payable approval yesterday to make sure that we're on track for the debt payment, which is it happens twice a year. Next slide, please. So here's, like I said, a little more detail. This breaks down the revenue by category. And once again, kind of the two areas that I would point out here are the grant revenue, which we talked about, and then the other revenue, which is says there's negative remaining, but what that means is we're going beyond our budgeted revenue amount in there because of the investment income that we have on interest. And we had a treasurer's report last month that I walked you guys through. If there's any questions on that, happy to answer that. And we're getting into the budget later, but I think we'll continue to see those revenues be higher in the future as well. Next slide, please. So from the expenses broken down by category, the only thing I'd point out here is that contract expense still has a ways to go, and that is in line with our grant revenue. Final slide here, jump into cumulative cash flow. So we've shown you this in this format a couple of different times. The left-hand chart shows our cumulative cash flow, and it compares versus history. So the bright green line is the one you should focus on there. That shows this year, including on the left side, it includes mitigations. On the right, we've tried to take that same green line and back out the mitigation, both income and expenses, to give you a feel for how that looks, because those mitigations are lumpy. We collect them over time, and then they go out in chunks like you guys experienced as we paid, and I guess it was the Motel 6.
Motel 6.
Yeah, which occurred before my time. But, 0.4 or 400,000 of cumulative cash flow to date through April. And like I said, the mitigation fees we've received is roughly 2 million, and then we've dispersed 5 million year to date. So I think that's the end of the monthly presentation for agenda item 3. I don't know if you have any questions. Happy to answer.
Okay, let's see. Are there any committee members in the room that have any questions?
No.
Any committee members online with questions?
None for
Somebody
me,
has
thank
their-
you.
Thank you. Okay, I just was reading my packet last night.
Good.
It's been a big meeting week. And on page 68, you say that the debt service payment in December included both principal and capital. I think, did you mean interest?
Sorry.
Okay.
Interest. Yes, correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so, yeah, there's two payments. The principal payment is paid annually, and then there's an interest payment paid twice, once in December and once in June,
June, okay,
which is why that item isn't, it's not linear like a mortgage would be,
right,
where you pay each month.
right. And with grants at 34%, with just a couple months left in the year, you know, how aggressive are we going after those? If they come in after this fiscal year, do we count them? You know, do we backdate them, or how does that work?
I wouldn't say we backdate. We're planning for those grants going forward. The big item that's been slow to ramp is the National Forest grant. It's roughly $3.4 million. We did actually see that begin to ramp last month.
Okay.
So there's still a long way to go. I believe those funds have opened up, and we're going to work as hard as we can to work through those in the next 2 months. But I think some of those will continue into 25 fiscal.
Yep, I can speak to that.
Please.
I have too many mics on. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, Julie Reagan, TRPA Executive Director. For the record, just to shed a little more light, Chad is exactly right. Because Congress passes the budget later and later every year, it puts everything in a real time crunch. So the money that Chad is referring to is the agreement with the U.S. Forest Service for Lake Tahoe Restoration Act funds. So the money has come in, and now we are the fiscal agent, and we are deploying that money on the ground to EIP partners based on the Lake Tahoe Restoration Act priority list of projects that we submit to Congress. So then our team is very busy working to make sure that those dollars get to the projects that are counting on them, but some of that might spill into next fiscal, but we're sorting all that out right now.
But with the grant revenue at 34%, I mean, we've got a lot more hanging out there.
Yep, and it typically just moves in these last couple months. It's
Okay,
pretty
pretty normal.
standard. Yep.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you. We'll now go to the public comment on this item. Is there any members in the room that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll go to our online.
Madam Chair, there is no public comment.
Okay, thank you. I will bring this back then for the committee. Is this agenda is a receive and file?
I will make a motion to recommend to the governing, I will make the motion to recommend to the governing board to approve the April financials.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Aguilar,
Yes.
Mr. Bass,
Yes.
Ms. Dis,
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Ms. Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Lane.
Yes,
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
and the whole committee is here. Yay. All right, we're going to go on to the next item, which is discussion and possible recommendation for release of El Dorado County Air Quality Interest Mitigation Funds in the amount of $2,509 towards the South Tahoe Greenway Shared Use Trail Phases 1B and 2. This information can be found in your packet on page 87. And I'd like to ask Ms. Campbell to present this item.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Tracy Campbell with the EIP department here at TRPA with a request, as you mentioned, from El Dorado County for $2,509 in air quality interest funds for the South Tahoe Greenway Shared Use Trail. The trail, also known as Dennis T. Macchiata Memorial Greenway, that got renamed a couple of years ago, I think, in memory of Dennis, is the backbone of South Shore's shared use trail network. And it's been built in phases. So phase 1A, 1B, and 2 are already complete, and planning for phase 1C is well underway. The requested funds will be used to pay for the state's Water Resources Control Board Water Quality Certification Annual Permit. And I'm not saying that twice. So this is a more unusual use of mitigation funds, as you may know. The regular or principal funds can't be used for these types of permitting or planning expenditures because they're very clearly directed towards shovel-ready in-the-ground mitigation projects. However, the interest accounts, which is essentially the accrued interest on those mitigation fund balances, have got a lot more flexibility, and they can be really helpful in filling these types of funding gaps for our local jurisdictions. So we call them small but mighty, so they kind of help out a lot. So it's a really simple request, a relatively small amount of money, and staff are recommending approval. We're joined online by Senior Engineer from El Dorado County, Dan Pickett, if you have any questions about the project or the trail. And with that, I'll pass it back to you. Thank you.
This is an amazing section of trail. It's amazing. Are there any questions or comments from committee members in the room? Are there any comments virtually from any committee members? Okay, then let's go ahead and bring this before the public. Are there any members in the room that would like to speak on this issue? Seeing none, are there any online?
Madam Chair, there are no hands raised for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll bring this back to the committee and entertain a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. So there's a motion on the floor. Is there any
Second.
further discussion? Okay, then we'll ask for a roll call vote, please, Maria.
Mr. Aguilar,
Yes.
Mr. Bass,
Yes.
Ms. Dis,
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Ms. Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Lane.
Yes.
Madam Chair, that motion passes.
Thank you. So that brings us to, this next item is an information only item. This is a briefing on the fiscal year 2024-2025 annual budget, and Mr. Cox will be presenting this.
Thank you. Next slide. So before we get into deep into the figures, wanted to spend some time to share about the process that we went through for the creation of this year's budget. So as you know, Chris Keeler and I have transitioned over the last couple of months. As Chris transitioned, he helped me build out a general framework for the 25 fiscal year budget. Our grants finance team spent a considerable amount of time to plan agency labor, right? We have a full staff now, which we'll get to later, but we went through and laid out exactly how that staff would be allocated and where their time would be spent, both in terms of grants and general funding. From there, we took that labor model and put it into the overall budget model. We built up the contract spend by grant, by function, by department. It's basically a bottoms up view by contract. Next, we took all this into an ops manager workshop. We reviewed it as a cross-functional and cross-department team, and we worked together then to balance the gap. Like these things, you look at a budget, and the ask usually comes in higher than what you can afford. So we spent some time as a group working through efficiencies to balance that budget. So the left-hand side of this chart really represents that process and the overall model for 2025. In total, there's a $2.5 million increase in projected revenue for 2025. This is driven in three main areas. The first is the planning and shoreline fees. These fees continue to increase to cover our costs. I think you have seen this over time. We assess inflation and we basically assess kind of the process by which we are doing that permitting. And the goal is to have that be a self-sufficient part of our agency. And today, as you can see on the chart, it does cost, and we're covering that with the general fund. The other couple of increases in the revenue versus last year's budget is around the state of Nevada and state of California. There's a bit more in the budget for proposed salary increases. And then also that investment income that I described in the April financials, we're going to continue to see that tailwind for at least through 2025. Most of our securities that are invested have a 20-month average maturity, so we can pretty much count on what what those are yielding today. So that will help us and be a bit of tailwind for 2025. Let's see. So bottom line, we are balanced at this moment, including the building fund. We did do, as part of the bond fundraising, we had monies earmarked to replace the retaining wall on the side of the building over here. We haven't got that completed yet in 24. We did go out to RFP, and we have selected a vendor for that, and we're kicking off the process like right now. Contract has been approved and we're working through that. So we'll spend a little bit of that in 2024, but the majority of that project post permitting and actually when we break ground and get it done will be in 2025. So with the exception of that item, it is balanced. So we will use bond money or that building fund to cover that that retaining wall. Balanced otherwise. Next slide, please. So, highlights of the budget, right, is the budget's at this point, I'd say 95% complete as it sits today. We're going to be spending time at our retreat tomorrow, right, to finalize out the work plan as a group. And, a couple of takeaways I'd say is there's been loads of operation manager input in this. This is a multi group process. This isn't just finance sitting in the back room figuring out the numbers. So we've worked together on it, and I'm proud of that. And I think it is also important to know that we've done some work already as an agency to to balance this budget. There's been a lot of discussions around efficiencies. How do we leverage resources across departments, across programs in order to be efficient that way? We've ensured that we're leveraging the RFP process for every contract that makes sense to do so, following our policy to ensure we're getting the best prices that we can for those contracts. So that's a big part of our spend. And we've been sharing best practices across departments to try to bring that budget into balance. And then the best part, right, is this budget continues to invest in our people. And that's great because we have a talented staff. So this will continue to invest in our staff and empower our talented team. Next slide, please. Just a couple of assumptions on revenue and then expenses, and then we'll finish up. So from a revenue perspective, this does include the Nevada AB 522 salary increases that were approved in the last legislature. So that 430, similar to the way we're going to the Board of Examiners for 2024, we'll do the same next year for the 430 from Nevada. And it's also important that we get the California match, which is needed as well for that AB 522 detail. We talked a bit about the planning fees, but once again, it's important to know that this is work to cover our cost as an agency. So those planning fees are going up, and that's based on the action that we took last fall, which was implemented in February. There's an inflation item that we put there. And then we also pass along these expedite fees, which we've seen more of over the last couple of months. So we've included that in our estimation process. There's also some major projects in the planning phase that we're going to have to basically ramp up and support. And I do believe the trends are leading us in the direction that we will see planning fees continue to increase in the coming year. And we already covered the interest income item. So the final slide here. Next slide. So from an expenditure perspective, this assumes agency at full staff. I don't know if we've always been at full staff, but I do know that it's a good thing. We're coming into the year fully staffed up. It also includes a 3 to 5% merit-based increase for staff. The number budgeted is 4, so we're going to do a process whereby we look at performance, we look at where folks are in the salary range, and it'll be somewhere between that figure. 4% is budgeted, and this is really key for long-term health of the organization because it's driven by our staff members. And I guess the final thing is, the zero-based contracts estimate on the expense side is it's a detailed view of exactly what we think we need by vendor, by department, by grant. And so that has been built up and placed into the budget. So, kind of with that and in summary, we're going to get into deeper detail here tomorrow as a group. There's still room to kind of flex as we determine the priorities, and if there are any shifts that come out of the meeting on Thursday. But overall, looking forward to the retreat tomorrow, and that's the 25 budget briefing, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions?
I don't have any.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the committee members online?
Yes, Madam Chair, it's Alexis.
Hi, Ms. Hill, go ahead.
Thank you. I was curious if we have any flexibility, and I'm so sad I'm missing the retreat tomorrow. I have a event that's been on my calendar for a while and I can't come, but are we building any flexibility for studies to see that transportation can be a mitigation measure? And for example, just thinking on the TTD side of the world, we were limited to use the old elementary school site for, I think it was 2 seasons by TRPA, and now we're in a difficult position finding a new site. I think we have a plan together, but it's not ideal for the East Shore Express. And I don't know if there's an opportunity. What I've learned in government is sometimes you just need to study issues to really fully understand them. And so I don't know if there's an opportunity to do a study on that, and if there's any funds available for such a thing. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Member Hill, this is Julie Reagan, Executive Director. Happy to speak to that. Thanks for the question. A couple of things, you will have a briefing later as part of the general board meeting agenda on the regional transportation plan. We are doing an environmental review of the regional transportation plan. So there will be multiple studies and analyses that will be conducted as part of that. And you already heard some of the proposals and policies that we've brought forth, the active transportation plan, the Vision Zero. And so there's a lot of work going on in that space. Related to the Tahoe Transportation District permit, that really relates to the 2-year rule for temporary activities. And we've been working, as I think everyone knows, with the TTD on this really big challenge, because the East Shore shuttle is really critical for recreation travel and congestion on the East Shore. But the ability to use the temporary activity ceases after 2 years. So it's a 2-year timeframe for temporary permits. Then TTD just needs to have a full permit, which we've known for a couple years, and we've been really open in discussions with the TTD team. The problem is it's very difficult to find a site. So we're all putting our heads together around that, and maybe we can talk more as a team separately. But yeah, we just have a 2-year window for temporary activities. Then a full permit needs to be exercised. So in that case, I don't think a study would be applicable in that scenario, but happy to work through any more problem solving that we need to keep that shuttle alive.
Thank you.
Are there any other committee members virtually that would like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yeah, this is Mayor Bass. I was curious, just with the California funds that we're looking to have matched and that haven't been matched yet, where is that at in the legislature? And yeah, what's that looking like?
I'm happy to take that one too. Thank you, Madam Chair. Julie Reagan, TRPA Director. Thanks, Member Bass. Yes, what we been able to do in working with the state of California, and I should say, before I answer the question, great job to Chad Cox on his first budget with the agency. We have a very complicated budget. This is a great illustration of the complexity of how TRPA's revenues work in the very nuanced and detailed manner between the states, because each state has a very different process. Nevada, of course, is a budget that goes for 2 years. It's a biennium approach. And that is challenging because different, California and Nevada have different economies and experience different budget challenges. Right now, California is stretched thin. Over the years, TRPA has weathered the storm in previous budgets of California's ups and downs. We've been very stable, but we haven't increased, but we've been flat. And this year, we're very happy that we're not getting cuts from California. When you look across the state, that's not the case for many critical programs. So that's good news. But what we've been able to do in working with California Natural Resources Agency, which is where our budget flows through, that Secretary Wade Crowfoot's office, is looking at funds that could be used for that match. And we've gotten a commitment that we'll have that 130,000 for this year. And we are looking now structurally, Member Bass, to fix that going forward. Because we're not an official state agency, we don't automatically get cost of living adjustments like any other natural resources agency would in either state. So we're actually in discussions with both states of how we can just have that be an automatic trigger. Whatever the natural resources agencies get for cost of living would automatically go into our baseline. Because right now it's like a two-step process. We have to ask for an enhancement or a budget change proposal where other agencies don't. So then what happens is some years that goes through, some years it doesn't. And it further compounds our competitiveness, and we get behind in our salaries and we can't be competitive. So we think we've got the fix for this year for California, but we do need a structural fix in both states going forward. And we're in active conversations with Secretary Crowfoot's office and Director Settlemeyer. And that's, one of the many things we have in common between the two states are trying to fix that. So it's still work to do, but we think we've got it sorted out for this fiscal because the dollars in Nevada are contingent really on California's match.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I kind of had the same question because the 134,000 is really already been realized by staff in the form of increases in salary. So that's 23-24 item that's still hanging out there. The 430,000 that was referenced as the state of Nevada and a reference to AB 522, is that 24-25?
Yeah, that would be the 24-25. The slight increase is, once you have like the Nevada piece is fixed, once you add that on, you need to kind of continue it forward because you have made those increases to the employees. So that is, I guess, that's key. And we do need to go back each year because it's not part of the baseline. You need to go back each year, referencing that bill and, going in front of the Board of Examiners to have that item, that revenue from the state released to the agency on an annual basis. So that's what Julie was talking about. If we could get that put in the baseline, then you don't have to go back each year for the ask.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This was an information only item. So thank you for that, Mr. Cox. Well done. We'll move on to committee member comments. Are there any members of the committee that have general comments that they'd like to make at this time or reports of any kind? Anybody online? Okay, seeing nobody, then we'll move into our public interest comments. This is an opportunity for the general public to comment. If any member of the public wishes to address the Ops and Governance Committee at this time, please raise your hand now, either in person or by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen or by dialing *9, and you will be unmuted by a TRPA staff member. Are there any members in the room? Seeing none, are there any members online?
Madam Chair, we have one so far. Doug Flaherty, if you'd like to address the committee, please go ahead.
Yeah, Doug Flaherty, TahoeCleanAir.org, Chair, members of the committee. Kind of interesting, your CFO mentioned, quote unquote, earlier during the retreat, we're going to finalize the work plan as a group. So I guess I'm curious, since your agenda shows no action taken tomorrow, is this changing? Are you guys taking action? Or are you deliberating towards action? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flaherty. Are there any other members of the public that would like to comment at this time?
Madam Chair, there are no other hands raised to make public comment.
Okay, thank you. Then I think Mr. Flaherty raised a good question. And yes, Ms. Reagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Julie Reagan, Executive Director of TRPA. I'm happy to speak to that. I think what Chad was indicating is that we are going to take input from the board tomorrow. There will be no action. We're not agendized for action or deliberation, and I do appreciate that clarification. What we typically do at our retreats is we hear from the public, and it's a public meeting, and we hear from board members, and we work together in a workshop setting. We take that input back at staff. We'll be bringing that back for action in June, and we'll have a draft budget and a draft work plan, and the public will have every opportunity to participate in that open meeting in June. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Flaherty, for that clarification and allowing us the opportunity to make sure that that's clear. Okay, so I think we're at the point where I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Excellent. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries and we are adjourned at 9:12 a.m. Thank you.